And good morning, everybody. Welcome to the DFS Minute for May 20th, 2015. I'm your host, Michael Rathburn, aka Rath. You can hit me up on Twitter at FantasyRath. And we're here on RotoCurve this morning after a pretty eventful day yesterday in the world of daily fantasy sports. We're going to hit up on the starting pitching meltdown last night and kind of the fallout of what happened with that. And just also some reaction on what took place with the ESPN news yesterday. For those that don't know, there was kind of a story that went out on awfulannouncing.com, which is ironic, talking about ESPN getting into daily fantasy sports content, and then this new quote-unquote host or analyst that they brought on, and kind of questioning, the situation and what's going on, and kind of the reaction to that, the fallout to that, my take on it, and kind of how I reacted to it. And then we're going to go into a little bit of a teaching lesson today. I'm going to do a screen share with you, and I'm going to show you a spreadsheet, or what we call a template, for utilizing Vegas data. The one thing I will say is utilizing Vegas data is a piece of the research. That's what we've always talked about here on RotoCurve. It's not all of the research. And if you just went by Vegas last night and you blindly picked Anibal Sanchez and Francisco Liriano because they were the two biggest favorites on the board, then you got smoked. So it's, again, like we say, it's a piece of the research. We want to show you how to use it. And in addition to the other tools that we've shown you and we talk about, looking at team batting, what do they do against lefties? What do they do against righties? What are the statistics that it should be looking at? Weighted on base, strikeout, walks, ISO, hard hit rate, also, home run, fly ball rate, things like that. And looking at the pitcher. What does the pitcher do against lefties? What does the pitcher do against righties? Is there a situation where they dominate or they're vulnerable? And so combining those three things is really how you should develop your starting pitching research for the day. Starting pitching in daily fantasy baseball is the most important thing. You have to nail it. If you don't nail it, you are going to lose. Simple bottom line. That's just how it is. Whether it's one pitcher site like FanDuel, where the win is worth 4 and your percentage of points for your target score in cash games is high, you've got to hit 12 to 14. You've got to hit 30 to 40%, 30, 35, 40% of your total score is coming from the starting pitcher. You're going to have to get real lucky on the bats and get a bunch of bombs and dongs if you're going to overcome the pitcher. So again, pitching research is critical. Spend the majority of your day studying pitching research and looking at who you should pick. Yes, you have 8 hitters or 9 hitters to pick from depending on where you're playing, but picking that 1 or 2 starting pitcher in a given day is critical to your success in daily fantasy. So let's run down kind of what happened last night. Look, these are the guys that bottomed out last night and didn't perform. Liriano, Nice, Anibal Sanchez, Gio Gonzalez, Sonny Gray, Johnny Cueto, Jose Quintana, all looked like pretty solid plays. I know I wasn't in favor of going with Cueto or Gray. I know some other guys were. And there were a lot of guys that jumped on the Liriano thing right away. Liriano blew up in the first, second inning. Everybody jumped in, had a party. Hey, I told you not to take Liriano. Well, here's the thing. Yes, Liriano does have that ability of being scary in the beginning of games. But if you look at what he's done this year and what he's typically done in PNC, the guy has been pretty much elite. The guy, as far as cash games go, so far this year, he hasn't had one bad game yet. So, when I looked at that and I looked at the Twins, look, the Twins were not at the bottom against lefties, but they weren't at the top. They were more like in the middle. I didn't see anything that told me that he would be in trouble against the Twins. And I know that there were other people that were on Liriano as well. So I get it. Hindsight's 2020. After a guy gets shelled in 2 innings and you want to say, hey, I told you not to take him. Look, that's fine. I do it with Strasburg. I have fun. It's all fun and games. But I still will stand behind a guy that has put up consistent fantasy performances, especially in the National League at home, going against an American League team that's losing a hitter coming over, was pretty much the heaviest favorite of the day and had moved past Anibal Sanchez and had elite strikeout rates. And just, I didn't see anything there that told me that he was a risky play. I talked about Gray being a risky play. I didn't like the fact that he was a small favorite going on the road and Oakland hasn't performed and he wasn't going to get the win, and that's what happened. Also, I didn't like paying up for Cueto on the road against the Royals. So those are two situations where, you know, it played out the way that I thought it would. Now, I did like James Shields. I loved the total in that game. Loved the, you know, and he did come through. But a lot of these other guys, you know, Gio Gonzalez blowing up, you know, John Nee's blowing up, Anibal Sanchez blowing up. It's just one of those things where you gotta really be careful, you know, and look at who the guys that you're picking in your 50-50s and heads up tournaments. A whole different ball game. We're definitely going to get into that down the line. But, you know, for me, I didn't see anything personally that told me that Liriano was a red flag. So I'm just going to stand behind the pick. The pick didn't work out, and we'll live to fight another day. As far as the ESPN situation and what went on there, so the awful announcing story came out talking about this woman, Cynthia Freeland, on ESPN becoming a DFS, daily fantasy sports analyst, and kind of questioning, you know, the validity of the background. Who is she? Nobody knows who she is. They're making substantiations that she wins 94% of her games, etc. It was funny because there were people that were actually originally tweeting out the story telling her congratulations. And then I think when everyone started reading the story, it was like, whoa, pump the brakes. What's going on here? This smells a little funny. So I thought that was kind of interesting that you got people saying congratulations, and then 5 minutes later, people are like, hey, did you actually read the story? You know, there's something to this. So I know we had put it out, and we had tried to, you know, kind of bring light to the fact that, hey, you know, do you guys know what this is? You know what's going on? Definitely read the story. So if you read the story and you knew what was going on, you definitely created a buzz. And there were a lot of guys that jumped in really quick. My stance on it was, look, you know, the 94% thing, whatever, you got to chalk that up to somebody in a production booth just being ignorant and stupid, because any good player knows that no one's winning at that rate. Now, the harm, there is harm in it, and I do believe it. You know, the two guys that I trust in this industry, Mike Leone and Drew Dinkmeyer, had two views on this in terms of, I saw Mike said, look, it can be harmful when you've got somebody putting out a statistic, quoting and stating a claim that we know is not true and not attainable. And I agree with Mike. There is harm in that because people look at that and automatically think, if I listen to this person, I'm going to win 90% of my games. Now, you and I both know that's not true, but the average Joe public that's watching ESPN, that's not watching RotoCurve, that's not looking at me, that's not going to Daily Roto or Fantasy Insider or SiriusXM, the average Joe is going to buy into that and believe it, because let's face it, ESPN isn't exactly the most credible news source out there. They've been known at putting stuff out there that's been phony and false for a long time. So it's not like we're dealing with the most credible news source. No, DFS in the mainstream, I talked about it weeks ago. I said, look, it's coming. There's a lot of things in the pipeline. It's coming, whether it's CBS, whether it's ESPN. And really, this firestorm started with the FanDuel CBS show and the comments that were originally made about it's not your mother's basement show. It's not another online chat show. Comments were immediately removed, and that created a storm. And basically, here's what I said. I said, look, you know, comment in poor taste, but DFS guys that are grinding this out, that are making a living, playing daily fantasy sports, providing content, have every right to jump up and say, hey, I'm doing this. I'm working my tail off. I'm trying to put food on my table for my family. And other people are coming along that don't play, that haven't played, and are staking their claim. I completely understand it, and I agree, and I get it. But let's be proactive and positive about it. Let's, you know, look, is the advice given out on these stations and these channels going to be any good? No, we know that, okay? But it is still exposing people to daily fantasy sports. And what your hope is much like in season long, all these sites, whether it's ESPN, Yahoo, CBS, and I know a lot of guys at all these sites and they provide great content, but there are reasons why there are sport specific sites for season long leagues, like Football Guys, like Fantasy Guru, like 4for4. These guys have built great businesses and are very successful and produce great content. Winning players are on those sites. They pay for the content. It's not free. There's a difference between free content and pay content. And when you pay for a subscription on those sites that I just named, and I'll even throw RotoWire in there as too, my guys at RotoWire. And if I left you out, I'm sorry. But those are the four that I can think of, especially on the football side. You're paying content. You're expecting delivery. You're expecting to win your league. You're expecting to finish in the money. And there's a reason why they have hundreds of thousands of subscribers every year. They produce the best content. People trust them and rely on them. The same thing is going to happen in daily fantasy sports and already has. What's going to happen is the mainstream guys are going to come in, provide the free content, open up the avenue, open up distribution, and then the sites that are the trustworthy sites that are providing the best information to teach players how to play and give the best information in terms of reliability. It has the best forum, has the best chat, the best environment, the best community, all that kind of stuff. And there's different content sites for different players. We here at RotoCurve, we do try to stress that we're speaking more towards the smaller stakes player, the newer player, or the intermediate player. And there's other sites that are more geared towards players that play at high volume. They deal with more analytics. They have more written content, and they gear towards that audience. And that's great because it's no different than what goes on in season long. There's different sites for different strokes for different folks. The ESPN thing, in my opinion, it did get overblown. I'm not going to go attack the girl because I don't think that she had anything to do with it. I think that it was probably a producer. I've worked on the other side. I've been in production. I've been in broadcasting on the TV side with major companies, and people put stuff out there thinking that it's not going to do any harm, and it will. So I don't blame her one bit. I'm not going to hold her to task. I had so many people say to me, oh, she can't be a legit player. I personally don't care. I don't care if she's won a dime. She's now a host on ESPN. She's earning a living. She's earning a paycheck. And basically she's being told this is what she's going to do, and she's doing it. So again, I'm not going to fault her for what somebody at ESPN did. Now, from ESPN's perspective, look, they're just starting out in the DFS content. They're gonna have some growing pains. They're gonna have some mistakes, and CBS is gonna have mistakes too. Hopefully, they learn from those mistakes and they get it right. But from this, from my perspective, it's like one of those things where let's not go attacking the girl. Look, ESPN's the one that made the stupid claim. Like, if you want to blast them, but I don't think it has anything to do with her. So that's just my take on it. And but again, I do understand why guys are kind of up in arms about it because, look, a lot of people are making a living trying to grind it out, like I said, and it is understandable. All right, so let's get on to a teaching session for today. Let's go into Vegas data and Vegas numbers and kind of give you a little insight as far as what you might want to look at on a daily basis. And one of the things that I look at, and again, I use it as a tool. I don't use it as an absolute. So let's get into this. It's going to be done in Excel. I do get the odds from Sports Insights. I did talk about them the other day. Sports Insights is an app that you can get, and they put out great content. And they're actually going to be getting into, I believe they're getting into daily fantasy sports content as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But I'm a big fan of Sports Insights and what they do. I do use their app, so I get the odds from them on my cell phone. I put them into the spreadsheet, and then I update it 2 or 3 times throughout the day. So this spreadsheet that I'm giving you is from yesterday. Okay, here's what I do is I start off, and the template is basically the headers at the top. I've got road, home, dog, favorite. I have divider, and I'll explain that. ML, which is money line, total, favorite, the dog, what the favorite projected is, what the dog projected is, and what the differential is. So I put in the home and road. I put in the underdog and the favorite. Divider is 100, and what this is I'm using this number 100 to calculate the money line percentage, which is an H. So I pump in the money line, the total, which is the run total. And then this is a calculation. The favorite is right here in its percentage. What I'm doing is I'm taking the money line and then I'm dividing it by the money line plus 100. And I did post this in our forums. I did an article on RotoWire last year where I talk about this. So this is giving me the percentage of what this player is favored on a given day. So we can see that yesterday that Liriano ended up being a 62% favorite. Sanchez and Miley ended up being at 61. The ironic thing about this is, like we talked about, Liriano and Sanchez blew up. How many people had Wade Miley yesterday? Nobody. Wade Miley was the #3 pitcher, according to Vegas, on the board yesterday. Gonzalez got blown up. Quintana didn't pitch well. Gray didn't. Kohler actually pitched okay. The funny thing about it was I saw guys that had Kohler and on FanDuel last night, which was pretty ironic. Ventura, who had a good game, Shields, who pitched well, and then the rest of them. And then you can come down here where you see the correlation between the money line and the favorite. But what this does is it gives you an actual percentage. So now you can equate, what does 164 mean? Well, it means he's a 62% favorite. So this is really where you're looking at the win and what player you think is going to get you the best win for the day. And then what I do is I have a formula for the dog. All that does is take 100% minus the favorite to give you the remainder. Next, what we have is, and this is the key part on how to read Vegas lines, because you can't just go by money line and total. You have to know what does it mean. And what I do then is we have the projected run total for the favorite. What we're doing here is we're taking the total, which is 7.5, multiplying it times 62%, and we're getting our 4.66. If you want to round this down to 4.6, you can. You want to put it out to 4.66, you fine. You want to put it down to 4.7, you can do that, no problem. Just go over here. You can expand it, or you can drop it. I typically just leave it at 4.66 because I'm anal. So that's what I do there. And if there's a tiebreaker, I kind of want to know where the tiebreaker is. And then what I do here, similar to the dog calculation here, the dog projected is simply the run total minus the favorite projected, giving me the dog projected. Then I've got differential. Differential is simply favorite projected minus dog projected. And what this is gives me the run total for the day. That's going to tell me, based on the Vegas lines, who is the true biggest favorite of the day in terms of run differential. So if you see here, it's not Liriano. The biggest favorite yesterday from in terms of run differential was actually Wade Miley. So you can do is you put a filter. I'll take the filter off. I'll show you how to do the filter. Take the filter off, put the filter on, and then what you can do here is you can do a sort, largest to smallest. And what this does is it shows me that Miley had the biggest differential yesterday. What does that mean? Well, it's something to consider when you're picking your pitchers. Now, of course, Wade Miley's a guy that's not a great pitcher. He's somebody that you would only want to use in a tournament in a certain situation. So you see Liriano, Sanchez, Gray, Gonzalez, all these guys had the biggest run differential. And so yesterday, the Vegas numbers did not perform. That's why we tell you that it's a piece of your research. It's not all of your research. So let's get into some of the other things that I have on this and how you can better use it. One of the things that I do is I do a sort by total, and I look at who the lowest run totals for the day are. So yesterday we had 4 games, 6.5, 6.5, 7.7. I'm always going to want to focus on these, and I see here that the money lines are really low. Anything under 150 is pretty much going to be considered mid-tier or low. So anything around that 110, 120 means it's a close game. You see here 55, 53. So in the differentials now, you had Ventura with the biggest differential in the low-scoring games. Ventura had a great game last night. He's been very shaky, but you can see here that there were indicators based on this data that perhaps Ventura was a good play yesterday. Obviously, we talked about James Shields. He's been more consistent. He was the second guy, but he was also going against Hamill, so you weren't sure about the win. You got Hudson Frias. A lot of people were on Frias yesterday, mainly because of the run total, and his price was extremely cheap. And then you also have Waka, who is favored on the road, again, with a low run total. So you see here, you go down, you look at the 9.5s and the 9s. These are where there's a lot of runs to be expected. There were not a lot of runs last night in LA, Toronto, as everybody had expected. And that's going to happen. Again, these are just ways that you can look at games and get a better feel for why people look at Vegas data and how they look at it. Now, one of the things I have is you see these circles, red, green, and yellow. And what this is called conditional formatting. And you'll see here at the top that you have conditional formatting. There's several different ways that you can use conditional formatting. The reason why I do this, and it's very basic, a lot of people use the color bars. I use the circles because to me, it just enhances it a little bit better. But what I'm looking for is, I'm going to go into show you what I do. Go conditional formatting, and you can do either new rule or manage rules. So I'm going to do manage rules and edit rule. And so what I have here is I picked you can do 2 color, 3 color, or whatever you want. I do icon sets, and then you can do all these different icons. And for me, the easiest is just the circles. And then what you do is you pick green, yellow, red, but what values you want to use. So the current value I have set up for this is if it's 150 or greater, it's going to give me a green. If it's 126, between 126 and 150, it's going to give me a yellow. And if it's less than 126, it's going to give me a red. So basically like 125 is the cutoff point that I have for this. And then you can do that with the rest of them. What I have here is pretty much like if it's in 6.5 or 7, it's going to get a green. If it's 7.5, it's going to get a yellow. If it's 8 or greater, it's going to get a red. And that gives me kind of an indication of where the games fall. So what I'm looking for is I'm looking for a green and a green if I can get it. I'm looking for green, green right here. No green, greens yesterday. But we did have some red, green. Red is close game. So when I look at that, when I see red and low scoring, a lot of times that's going to be my second pitcher, or those are guys that are second pitcher option, where I'm not as heavily relying on the win. I just want innings and strikeouts and low run totals. The guys at the top are really going to be my cash game plays for like one pitcher sites typically. But again, we have to use this research in conjunction with the other things that we've talked about, whether it's the team batting, the individual pitcher and the splits and things like that. So then over here on Favorite Pro, pretty much have it set up where if it's 4.5 runs or greater, it's going to give me a green. If it's between like 4.49, it's going to give me a yellow, and the reds are in red. So one of the things I'm looking at too is who's projected to get the lowest amount of runs that day. So yesterday it was actually Minnesota. We see that didn't work out. Then we see actually Cincinnati was at 2.91, and we see the Ventura pick did, and then the Shields pick worked out. So again, it's not going to be 100%. Again, this is only one day of sample size. So, but over the long haul, there is a correlation between Vegas data and performance. So it is something that you absolutely want to use, but it's not something that's absolute. You want to use it in conjunction with the pitching charts that we show you from Fangraphs, the team batting, and the individual starting pitcher and what they do against righties and lefties. All right, guys, that is it for today, the DFS Minute. You're going to hit us back here up at 12 noon for the Curve Show with Benny and Josh. And then we're going to hit you back later on tonight with the DFS PM edition, DFS Minute PM. And hopefully we'll have a winning night tonight. And let's hope that it's not another frustrating night, because last Friday was frustrating, and the short slate on Monday was frustrating, and then last night. So I think we need to have a positive night here. Let's get back on the horse. Let's get a positive night going, and we'll see you back here later on today. Stay classy, DFS.